Welcome back to another edition of the Smart Driving Cars podcast. We appreciate you tuning in. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with the Faculty Chair of Autonomous Vehicle Engineering at Princeton University, Alain Kornhauser. Hi, Alain.
Hey, good morning, Fred.
Almost looks summery out there.
Almost, it will be as soon as the sun comes up.
Alain's on the West Coast. And with us once again from Sweden is the publisher of the Dispatcher, consultant, and author, Michael Senna. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Fred. Hi, Alan. Great to be here again.
Hi, Michael. Michael, is the sun coming up today, or
The sun left us about an hour ago. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon here.
Oh, geez! And guess what? The day got longer. This is
Yeah.
We're coming up the other
Yes,
side.
we're on the uphill right now.
We're on the uphill. Yay!
Yesterday was the shortest, and
Yeah.
we'll be there. We'll be there in 6 months.
Ooh, and we'll party.
Well, before we get into some of the latest, Alan, you have on top in your newsletter the Nobel Prize award ceremony, which took place this month in Stockholm, your territory.
It's
Among the recipients for physics was Princeton's John Hopfield. Really wonderful to see.
Yes, and I'd like to call him a good friend, and it's just such a thrill for me. I'm like starstruck, and so I just threw it out there for, in case it's just, everybody. Oh yeah, whatever. This isn't just a whatever. It's a significant one.
Absolutely. Well, the big news to close out 2024 was GM's decision to pull the plug on the Cruise robotaxi business after spending something like $10 billion. And Michael, you had been questioning their being in that business from the start, I think. Write about it in the upcoming January edition of the Dispatcher. It's also one of the leads in the latest edition of Smart Driving Cars. So I'm going to let you both have your say on this. Maybe you first, Michael.
Okay. Well, GM canceled on the 10th of December, and apparently has spent $10 billion since they bought Cruise in 2016. And I've said many times that they bought Cruise in order to pump up the value of their stock. Mary Barra claimed at the time and afterwards that the robotaxi business that Cruise was in was going to generate $50 billion a year in revenue starting in 2030. Interesting that she looked at this little company with a couple of employees generating a third of what then was the revenue for the entire company of GM. But after she announced that GM was getting out of the robotaxi business, she said in a call with investors, and I quote, "You've got to really understand, the cost of running a robotaxi fleet, which is fairly significant, is not our core business." Yeah, I understood that, and that's what I've said. I said it when they closed down the operation after the unfortunate accident that occurred a little over a year ago. She was the one who was making this claim, not the people in the business. And what I also have said is that you, General Motors, Mary Barra in charge, and the entire industry have been missing the entire point for the past 10 years. Cruise was never in the running a robotaxi fleet business, and neither is Waymo. Cruise was, and Waymo is, in the business of delivering driverless driving, not riding. The next issue of the Dispatcher is going to go into more detail on this because of something that Waymo has done. It's a new deal that they've come up with, and the company that they're working with are both saying basically the same thing that I've been saying. Waymo's not in the ride delivery business. We are, the other company, and we aren't in the driverless driving business. They are, and we're each going to do what's best for us. So I think it's unfortunate that 10 years, almost 10 years have been wasted with Cruise. They could have done a lot more. Unfortunately, they had an owner who was pumping money in, but really not doing very much with the business. So maybe after more billions are wasted on the old, what I call the old orthodoxies, we might get some help in establishing a new, more useful one, which is what we've described in the book that Alan and I have written, The Real Case for Driverless Mobility. That's my 2 cents.
Yep. Well, I agree that, it's one thing to run a business giving rides with whatever technology is out there. And it's another business, creating the technology to do that business. And they are two very different things, because in some sense, creating the technology is a technological issue or whatever, and giving of the rides is probably a sociological issue. I mean, it's a whole different business. And you really have to put the two together. And the question is who's going to give the rides? And it could be that one's giving oneself a ride, which in some senses, if you look at the auto industry, it's created the technology that allows me to give myself a ride. And that's really good. And the tool that I use to give myself a ride most of the time, I'm giving myself a ride. Or getting a ride is I'm giving myself a ride. When I hop onto the airplane to come out here to LA, it was United Airlines that was giving me the ride, and it happened to be in a Boeing jet. And those are it's nice that Boeing is out there making the jets, but United is giving me the ride and being the responsible entity to give me the ride and doing all the gory details associated with giving me a Diet Coke because I wanted a Diet Coke, and making sure there's a bathroom that's working, and dealing with me when they're late and they have to make excuses to me and all that. Boeing's not doing that. And so there really are two businesses here, and I guess we'll see what happens with this. Maybe everybody will at some point will have a Boeing jet to give themselves a ride. We make it there. We have been there with the car, because Henry, put together a car that many of us could afford, and we all hopped on instead of, going and finding a horse someplace. So I don't know. It's where we are in this business, but this is I think the business of the whole thing. Michael.
Well, GM said we're going to take the people who are ready to come and work with us, probably in Detroit, not staying where they're currently located, to help us to develop systems that will help people allow us to develop cars that drive themselves for people who will buy cars for themselves. So self-chauffeured, excuse me, self-chauffeured cars. And that's fine. I mean, most car companies today have large groups of people who are working on advanced driver assistance systems. GM already has some capabilities of having cars drive with people having their eyes and hands and feet near where they should be, but not necessarily driving, completely by themselves. And that's fine. I mean, but General Motors is already doing that. And, I think that the staff that will come from Cruise to GM will help them do that. But that's not necessarily solving the problem that we think really needs to be solved with a car that really can drive itself, because it doesn't have a driver, and therefore doesn't have the cost of the driver for providing rides for people who can't afford to own their own car or drive their own car or are not capable of, for one reason or another, physical, mental, or economical, to have a car to drive. So I think it's the point I'm making is that it's unfortunate that a company had bought Cruise, which was a year ago at a point of being rather close, probably closer than anyone else to Waymo in terms of being able to deliver a driverless vehicle. So
And the former CEO, Kyle Vogt, had some harsh words right after the demise was announced, calling GM
yeah,
a bunch of dummies, I think was his quote. So
yeah.
that's,
Well, I don't know whether
Yeah,
he left with a golden parachute or a lead parachute, but uh, it's never really a good idea to burn bridges. Although I know some, I've burned bridges myself, so I know why. Um,
I know I can't turn around because there's none left behind me. That's for sure. I left everyone ablaze. I don't know, but yeah, it's really interesting because if one one's always had the opportunity and wanted the opportunity to really help the driver in driving the vehicle. And really this is and if GM is really going to focus on that, then focus on that. But as I have as a last thing in smart driving car e-letter this time, the poor Blomberg post office is closed. Why? Because a 79-year-old woman, could have been a man, woman, didn't realize she had put her car in reverse and hit the gas. My goodness, if you can't help people, who make that mistake, not crash into the front of the Blomberg post office, or a year ago, less than a, a 2 miles from where I live, some woman killed a worker doing the same thing at her house, backing up. You know, if you can't do it for backing up, if you can't put in automated emergency braking systems that work, I mean, how tough is that? There's a brick wall there. Don't go. I mean, how much software do you need for that? I'm sure Cruise's software and systems could do that very easily for you, Mary. Why isn't
yeah.
it in all your cars? Why hasn't it been in all your cars? Come on, man, woman,
Mhm.
whatever.
there's that
I
section
haven't
again.
used the come on, man. I don't want to go back to that. I'm over that
Yeah.
phase of my life.
The
Yep.
Verge, Alan and Michael, reports that Alphabet owned Waymo, and you've touched on it already. Michael has done over 5 million driverless trips, 4 million of them this year. The rides were in Phoenix, San Francisco, and LA, as well as Austin. There are plans to launch in Atlanta and Miami. They've just said they're going to start testing in Japan. The pricing thus far, from what I understand, has been similar to the premium tier of ride-hail services like Uber Black. I hear,
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
go
well,
ahead.
look, the pricing is the pricing. It's the beginning pricing. I guess what I tried to comment on that is, it is marvelous that they've given that many rides driverlessly, from as far as any of us can tell, have really done it and done it safely. Because if they hadn't done it safely, I mean, everybody would be in just absolute whatever. But you know what they've done, they've barely crossed the starting line of giving rides. Okay, I mean, it's great. It's great. It's great. Keep doing it. But my goodness, the opportunities if for that are so, and I believe, enormous, that get on with it. Please do it. And why are you looking at Japan? there, there isn't
Well,
enough here for you to do. You're at 0.001% of the drives market right now. I mean, you're going to spend your new 5.6 billion to go to Japan when we could use the help right here in America. What? I don't. And do you need that headache? I don't know. I just don't understand. But that's my minor point on that. Michael, you must have other points.
Well, I said it. I said it to start out with. In January of this year, almost a year ago, I wrote a lead article, and the lead article was intended to answer the question of whether Waymo is going to be in the ride delivery business, or whether people were going to believe what it has said, and it keeps on saying we're in the driverless driver development business. So that article had almost, except for us having a conversation like this one, it had almost no reaction whatsoever. Okay. A year ago, Alphabet had a total revenue. Alphabet Inc. consists of two parts. One is Google, and the other is Other Bets. And inside Other Bets is our friends from Waymo, plus a number of other companies, 12, I don't know, 14 companies. A year ago, Other Bets had a total, these are all the companies together, had a total of $1 billion in sales, in revenue. And Alphabet a year ago, let me just scroll up here to get the right numbers, just to make sure. A year ago, Alphabet had a total of 283 billion in revenue, and Google, right? Google, Alphabet's, Other Bets, Alphabet the company. All right, Google had 282 billion in sales, which was 99.62% of the total revenue of Alphabet. In 2023, now I'm going to go 2023, Alphabet had 307.4 billion in revenue. Google had 305.6 billion in revenue, and Other Bets had pumped itself up to 1.52 billion in revenue. Now Waymo's in there. They don't report how much Waymo did, but Waymo is part of that group. 99.41% of Alphabet's revenue is Google. 1.52 billion is Other Bets, which includes Waymo and lots of other little companies. I'm going to push the point again, because I'm next, not this issue, not the one that's coming out in January, but the one that's coming out in February. I'm going to have an update. The update will be an appendix on the article, because the article is about, as I said earlier, it's about Waymo finally beginning to really show its hand in terms of how it wants to do business. And if people don't pick up on that, pretty darn sure that they're going to miss the boat. So, whether they've got a million rides, what they're trying to do is to prove that driverless driving is possible, so that they can get everybody to buy their hardware and the software. It's plain, it's simple, it's laid out very clearly. They're not going to be a 50 billion, 100 billion, 200 billion dollar company. Waymo's, Alphabet's not going to, throw them out and make tons of money on selling the company to who? To Mr. Sun, or who's going to get who's going to do this? So I guess we're going to wait and see. Another year will pass.
So, Michael, you're basically saying that most of Alphabet, which it makes its money out of searches.
It's 57%
searches,
search.
Whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
Searches. Waymo is it going to be that it's going to make its money out of rides? Because rides are equivalent to searches, you know.
No, it's not
There's a
going to
lot.
make
There's a,
it's not going to make its money out of rides. It's going to make it's going to help Alphabet go from 307 billion to 607 billion by helping Google, which is where
so
it's going to end up.
who's gonna do the rides?
What
Okay,
this is, I'm
Google
not,
does
listen, who's going to
searches.
do the rides is the company that they're one of the companies that's going to do the rides is the company that they've signed a deal with. And I'm going to talk about that in another issue. I'm not going to go into that right now. What
So,
what
so is that the company we should all invest in because they're the ones that are going to be doing the searches.
No,
So
they're going to be
they're the ones that are going to become
they're
the
not
new
going to be no,
data bets.
you're not getting
They're
this. You're not
oh,
getting
why am
this.
I not getting it?
Nobody's getting this yet. The company that's going to get the benefit of the software will be the company that has control over the searches that are being done. And unless the FTC comes in there and breaks up Google and breaks up Alphabet, they're the ones who are going to benefit from this. There are going to be many companies that will be delivering rides. And even more importantly, there are going to be many companies who will be using the Waymo software and hardware and the development the developments that they've put into place already for managing the ride process. There will be many companies who are doing that. And the more companies that do that, the more Alphabet, first Google, because it'll be part of Google, and Alphabet eventually will benefit from that. That's how it works. That's why Alphabet is doing this. If Waymo became a taxi company for the entire US country, forget about what Uber is doing right now. But if you took all the taxi companies together, it's a $12 billion industry. I wrote that in our book. I
Yeah,
mean, it ain't big enough to even make it into the Google other business with Play Store hardware and YouTube members.
but
Yeah,
Michael, it used to be
yeah,
that we all went to the library and went all to the Dewey Decimal System to find things, and then somebody found a way to bring that all together into one called a search, and we all went to one place. Now, and of course, then we did much more than just search the libraries with Dewey Decimals. We searched everything. So who is going to assemble the rides business so that it's not just an assembly of the Dewey Decimal taxi companies' businesses, but in fact becomes the the search business and does it all whatever. And isn't that the opportunity of automation? You can just sit back and tell these things what to do from some central to do da da da.
yeah.
You can hey,
There are two.
that's the
There are two.
rides giving. That is
No,
the United Airlines search rides
uh,
business. That then, ooh, that's what
guess
I
what?
want to become.
You know, you mentioned United. You mentioned United is one of many companies who are in the airplane ride business. In the
There aren't
passenger
many
airplane,
there.
there are rather many. There are, in
Uh,
fact, rather many.
not really, but yeah, sure. Yeah,
Yeah, well,
let's not argue
there are
that.
about five big ones in the United States, and there are about five big ones in Europe,
So there are
and
10.
there are tons of them
And
in
then
China and
yeah,
there
well,
are
yeah.
lots of them. There actually are lots of them. And one thing about the taxi business, which Uber's what Uber did, although they're not making any money on their taxi business, they're making money delivering stuff. They're not making
Are
money
they
on their
making
taxi
money?
business.
I mean,
Yeah,
we might even
yeah,
argue
well,
whether, I
yeah, I
don't know.
think
Never
they're,
mind. Let's not
they've
go
got
there.
yeah,
We'll be
let's
all
not
day.
go there.
We don't have
Yeah.
that much time.
No, we don't.
We're,
We don't.
anyway, we throw that out for people to, uh, I guess both of our point is we do believe that there is a rides business out there. There's
Absolutely.
certainly a rides business out there for people who really need a ride. And there
Yes.
may, in fact, need be in rides business for a lot of others, because if you look at what we go through to give ourselves a ride, it wouldn't take much to maybe make it so that, hey, I would love to be chauffeur wherever I go. Da. I mean, who wouldn't? And in a sense, the key to the rides business, in my view, is of course automation. As automation is a key to a lot of things. And in fact, if the search business is an automation. It's, doing it with code instead of with people. And the opportunity here, maybe, in fact, that's what I think even Adam Jonas, going back to the day, basic things is that, it's the automation, whether you want to call it autonomy or AI or any other fancy schmancy, whatever name, Stanford name you want to put to it, go ahead. But, Silicon Valley, however you want. But the rides correlate to quality of life. And if the quality of life is associated with, let's call it the American lifestyle, whatever the heck that happens to be, 1950s, 60s, 70s, 2000, 2020 version, there is a real opportunity there. And basically, this is what we've been talking about. And basically what the book talks about. It says, hey, for people who don't have it, I mean, it's godsend. For people who already have it, it might not be too bad either. And they might be willing to reach down in that pocket of theirs, and it might be really good. And it's not transit. Thank you. Fred, let's move on.
The other hot topic that we want to touch on, I think, is NHTSA proposing new rules for self-driving cars, allowing vehicles without traditional controls like pedals and steering wheels. Guidelines call for AV companies to share safety data with the agency, but it doesn't appear that it's going to be mandatory.
I mean, why wouldn't the companies want to share safety data? I mean, the times to hide this are over. I mean, didn't the whole cruise incident prove that, look, if you're not safe, you shouldn't play. And if you should happen to trip over something, let everybody know about it so nobody else trips over it. And come on, oh, I'm giving away IP. Come on, cut it out. Be forthright about this. Nothing's perfect. And let's all be out there doing a good job. And to share the data should not be an issue at all on this stuff. And I mean, could you imagine how hard GM worked? How much of that 10 billion was spent trying to get NHTSA to say it's okay to build the origin vehicle without gas pedals, and just when they pull the plug, NHTSA comes around. Oh, it's going to be okay. We're finally coming around. We're going to, what does the steering wheel, throttle, or even rear view mirrors have anything to do with a safe driving car today? Maybe, in 1950 it did, but not today. It's a new world. Come on. Wake up, NHTSA. I don't know.
You have something to add here?
I feel that this is poorly timed because there's a new administration coming in. We know what happened during the 4 years that the person who's coming in to be the president again. It didn't even have it's a person in charge. So it's I think it's a little bit too early. Plus, we know that Elon Musk has got an awful lot of influence over what's happening right now. I think the Speaker of the House asked him if he'd like to be the speaker, take over his job when the heat was going up. I
mean, that's all clickbait, Michael.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody's playing around with everybody with I don't watch the news anymore. I don't want to hear about any of that stuff.
That's a good thing. Then it's a good thing to listen to these we could take part in here because Fred and I give you the news.
I know.
I, I don't see much news in this, and I think we have both been asking for many years for more transparency, more information to be provided so that people could judge whether these systems were in fact safe. So finally they got around to saying, yes, we need to have more information, and you don't get to do more than 2,000 vehicles during the course of a year. And maybe those things will change. But what I think is important is, and I've said this many times, we need to make sure that the vehicles that are on the road are tested according to requirements that that are clear, known to everyone, and they should be part of the federal traffic safety requirements. It shouldn't be, we're going to do this, then we're going to do requirements after that. We should be developing requirements that can be used to test the vehicles to make sure that they're safe. And I know that there are a number of people who don't agree with me on this. And it doesn't matter whether it's the European approach or the US approach. They should be both doing exactly the same thing, establishing requirements, being able to test those requirements. And the problem that we have here with NHTSA saying, okay, you need to give us this data, is because we don't have a type approval process, and we are the car companies do the tests, and then they tell NHTSA, yes, everything works just fine. But if you don't have any set of requirements, they don't know whether it can work just fine. And we've seen in all of the vehicles, including Cruise, including Waymo, including Tesla, that they do have problems, but there's no requirement to say what exactly was that supposed to do according to a requirement. After the fact, you can say, oh, sure, they should. That car never should have been able to do that. It should have known that pedestrian was going to go across the street there, even though it was dark, and the person had a bicycle and it didn't look like she was going to go across the street. You should have known that. But set up the requirements and then test the vehicles before they get out on the street and have the problems.
But Michael,
Yep.
NHTSA needs to have two objectives. It needs to have a safety objective and it needs to have a mobility objective. And nothing is perfect. And we don't know what we don't know. And, my goodness, when you can't even do the simple things of hey, you're in reverse, don't go forward because there's a brick wall there. This isn't, somebody not seeing whatever. And if you look at the total chaos in driving as it is, with what people do in terms of drinking, which you could stop that in terms of using their phones. You could stop that in terms of all the misbehavior that goes on, sitting there and just asking for information about crashes that might have been caused by X, Y, and Z, as opposed to also looking at all crashes and saying, hey, what if we had X, Y, and Z? We wouldn't have had those, and doing some sort of balance. And it doesn't even have to be a close balance, but not say, hey, it can't be any of one and has to be all of something else, is like lunacy. Sorry, but yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, no, I know you agree.
As Michael said,
and when we do agree on this, and yes, absolutely. But one can collect data. One can do as good a job as they can on things. One can be forthright and open, as opposed to sleazy and who knows what, and hiding it and faking it and doing what and so on. And let's just be honest about this stuff. Honesty's tough. I agree, but all right. Enough on this one.
As Michael said, whatever is taking place now, we don't know if it's going to matter at all in another month or so. So
well, of course it will matter. There will be an administration, as whatever, as unhappy as we are for that particular thing. Let's work with it, and let's try to make it as good as possible. I'm not throwing in the towel at this point.
I guess the point was that that things are going to change, so we'll have to see how they change.
Things will change. Things are going to have to change all the time. There's no constancy out there. One can't, we want to go back to the 50s? Cut it out.
Turning back to the newly published edition of the Dispatcher, it's the musings section of the newsletter. And Michael, we're going to close things out. You've got a beautifully written piece for the holidays, really, titled "Feeling at Home."
Yeah, I did get a lot of comments on it, and then they varied, but they all basically said the same thing. Thanks so much for sharing your personal views, and it's nice to hear about your family and so on. Um, and it's it. I used the experience and the personal experience. I mean, this everything in there was absolutely true. Um, but the story is about how a city like Scranton can can change. It changed from being a vibrant, polluted city to being a totally unvibrant, polluted city to being a kind of just at the beginning stage of getting back some of the vibrancy and much less of a polluted city. One of my friends, who's also a reader of the Dispatcher, grew up in Niagara Falls, and he said we didn't have a Mary Scranton who was able to put money and people together to clean up the sewer that was running through our city, Niagara Falls. We didn't have businesses that were able to do more than pollute and then leave and go someplace else to pollute. Niagara Falls went through the same population decrease as Scranton, from about 150 or so to about 70,000. But Niagara Falls continues to go down the drain, whereas Scranton seems to be coming up a bit. And that's the story that I wanted to tell, that there is hope, but you have to engage. You have to be doing things that help everyone. Whether it's Steamtown or cleaning up the river or having a trail that runs from the New York border all the way down to almost to Philadelphia. It's doing these kinds of things that help to bring a city back. And I think many of the cities that I talk about often are going to have to do those kinds of things. So that was that
Well,
was my reason for writing.
Well, it is very heartening and on two fronts because, of course, we're very invested in Mercer County and looking at Trenton and looking close at Trenton. It desperately needs a benefactor in there who's going to clean it up. I mean,
Yeah.
and it has such opportunities, and hopefully somebody sees that there is a business opportunity there that in fact can lift everybody up and lift the
Mhm.
people up and lift the infrastructure and lift everything up and so on. And it does have an opportunity. And I think as a close, I'd like to, I got the pleasure of meeting with two of my former colleagues recently. I'm a Chocmock, and I'll share a picture, who's 90 and a half, who's just vibrant as heck and so on, and still at that, and also had the pleasure of seeing J. Stewart Hunter, who was probably, I think, maybe the best statistics teacher ever, whatever. And seeing him at 101 and a half and spending an
Mhm.
hour with him was just brought total joy to my life. So in this holiday season, I couldn't be happier about where where we all are, where we stand. Let's hope the Waymo is able to deliver rides to people. I mean, they're delivering 4 million rides this year with using driverless vehicles is an enormous accomplishment, because there's no one else, at least in America, who's done even one ride that's still alive, that's still doing it. So kudos to them. Got a long way to go to figure out how to do it. The opportunity to really improve mobility is fundamental to improving quality of life of the, let's call it American lifestyle, whatever the heck that happens to be. And let's wish them the best, and maybe wish some of us who are also trying to help it out our best. And on to a new year. Things aren't exactly the way we would want it everywhere, but what the heck? What we have is what we have. Let's do the best with what we have. What else
You
could
also
I
had
say?
some kind words for the students that you had this past.
Oh yeah, I mean, I had a great class this year. You know, we basically had them take a look at, hey, how do you improve mobility, or how do you provide a mobility system in your community? And I want them to do it for their community, where they could bring some of their own knowledge about their community to bear on this, instead of having some outside consultant to come in and decree upon them. Oh, I mean, how often has that worked well? Probably, I don't know. I think maybe it's better to do it from within than from without. I don't know. Who knows? Anyway, we want to wish everybody a happy and joyous holiday season, and let's go on to 2025 and let's do whatever we can do.
Here we go. Michael, thank you once again for spending time with us.
Yep.
Always my pleasure.
And we want to thank all of our listeners and viewers, and warm and wonderful holiday season. We wish that all for you. And thank you for spending time with us. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with Alan Kornhauser. Thank you for listening. Stay safe.
Thank you, folks.